My name is Dr. Monica Prendergast. I'm a professor of drama education at the University of Victoria, and I'm the president of the Confederation of University Faculty Associations of British Columbia, or CUFA BC. CUFA BC is the provincial voice for more than 5,500 university professors, instructors, lecturers, and academic librarians at 5 research universities across the province. We work with the faculty associations at Royal Roads University, Simon Fraser University, the University of British Columbia, University of Northern British Columbia, and the University of Victoria. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which CUFA BC's office resides is on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. We acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Stolo nations. We are here today to present the winners of the CUFA BC Distinguished Academics Awards. These awards honor the outstanding scholarship and public policy contributions of distinguished academics in British Columbia. Academics whose scholarly activity have made significant contributions to the community beyond the academy. Faculty members in BC's universities engage in outstanding scholarship that shapes new discoveries and deepens our understanding of the world. While much of this work happens beyond the public eye, it has far-reaching impacts on policy, technology, and society. The Distinguished Academics Awards provide a platform to acknowledge the invaluable role of university research in our communities. I am pleased to present the group winners of the 2025 CUFA BC Hore Boyanowski Academic of the Year Award to Dr. Dennis Hore and Dr. Bruce Wallace. This award recognizes a recent outstanding scholarly contribution to the community beyond the academy. Receiving this award represents the admiration of colleagues from across institutions, disciplines, geographic borders, and beyond. Doctors Hore and Wallace join us to talk about their research.
I'm Dennis Hore. I'm a professor in the departments of chemistry and computer science at the University of Victoria.
I'm Bruce Wallace. I'm a professor in the School of Social Work at University of Victoria and a scientist with the Canadian Institute for Substance Use Research.
Can you tell me about your research interests?
So I'm broadly interested in spectroscopy, and that is the study of how matter interacts with light. So a lot of matter is composed of molecules, but molecules are just too small for us to see by conventional means. So when we study how light interacts with objects, how it's transmitted or reflected from objects, and how that light changes, it gives us a window into that microscopic world of atoms and molecules.
My research is mostly called community-based research, and that can look very different for different people, but for me it's been mostly related to inner city health and working in anti-poverty work. And so for me, it's working in downtown communities and being able to respond to the issues that are most impactful and working with those people who are impacted by them in the research process.
Okay, thank you. So your nominators describe your work as an outstanding example of how a university can engage researchers and students in innovative solutions responding to our most pressing societal issues. Can you tell me about your substance drug checking project?
Yeah, so Substance Drug Checking Project is a University of Victoria project that Dennis and I were able to get started and still keep going now over the years. And it started as a response to the toxic drug overdose crisis in British Columbia. And we were starting the program just as the provincial government was declaring that to be a public health emergency. What it is that we, as faculty and as a university-based project, are providing an essential public health service, basically. We're in community every day, being able to provide a drug checking, which is looking at the chemical composition of people's substances and being able to tell people if it is what they might expect it to be, because it's an unregulated market and people don't know what it is, and being able to tell people as much as we can. And then with that is the harm reduction advice around being able to tell people, interpret that information and being able to make it useful or pragmatic for people. And it's all meant to basically reduce the harms of illicit substance use. And there's other parts of that too, which can be also just addressing the risk of stigmatization around not talking about the substances. And especially, we need to be talking about these things. This is one of the most significant public health crises of our time.
And through this work, this is also an opportunity for us to develop and test a lot of new technologies. There are a lot of techniques out there which can do chemical analysis in a lab, but once you leave a laboratory-based setting, there's a lot of gaps in terms of what kind of technologies would work in a point-of-care setting.
How did you come to work with each other and on this project together?
Yeah, so it's a pretty unique collaboration of social work and chemistry working together, and it's really attributed to University of Victoria and a matchmaking process that UVic did, where people knew that I was working on in this area around harm reduction and the harms of substance use, but also around inner city health, before it was declared a crisis, and then UVic also knew about Dennis's work and his pursuing of different innovations and different technologies. And so they brought us together. And I think this was almost 10 years ago, maybe now. And we probably would never have met, let alone worked together for all these years and being able to do this collaboration together. So it really is the power of trying to bring disciplines that would typically not I always say, not only not work together, but probably never even meet.
Dr. Hore, you work on fundamental problems in the physical chemistry of surfaces. Why is it important to you to engage in community-based research?
It's a privilege to get to work on fundamental problems in science because not many people get to work in those areas. But at the same time, it's very esoteric work, and although there are practical applications of those types of projects, that's not really the motivation for working on fundamental areas in science. So at the same time, I think there's a real need for our work to be relevant regardless of what field we're in. And the community drug checking work is an opportunity for people to really see the translation of the science into the community. And this work has allowed this to happen at a very rapid pace, where students and staff on a project can see things that they develop right away be applied and benefit people and have a practical application.
Thank you. Dr. Wallace, your nominators describe you as a social worker and engaged researcher who collaborates with agencies that focus on poverty, homelessness, mental health, substance use, and harm reduction. You've worked in these areas long before the toxic drug crisis was declared a public health emergency. Why is it important to you to engage in research that's in the public interest?
Well, I'm so grateful for all the communities that trust to work with me and invite me to work with them. And so it's been really amazing to be able to have decades-long relationships with some of the organizations and the people that we were able to build the drug checking project from. So for me, it feels right. It's, I guess, a very basic answer. I can't imagine doing research that would not be so applied and have such purpose. But I think, at universities, we often talk about how do we engage communities in research, and we try to figure out the ways to best engage communities. And for me, I feel like what I learned over the years is we need to flip that on its head a bit and start talking about how do we get universities and how do we get university researchers in community. We have to look at ourselves more than the community's roles and how we need to change and how we need to be in community all the time. So that doesn't mean just going to community because we want to do research. It means being in community every day and being able to respond to the issues that are most important in community. And then when research questions come up, we're there. And I think that's how we need to start rethinking what community engaged research is and how it can happen, and how universities can be more in community rather than community more in universities.
Your nominators describe you as professors who aren't afraid to challenge the status quo, whose innovations are changing how governments and public health agencies are responding to the crisis. Do you see your work as a model for other issues facing British Columbians? And where do you see this project going next?
Well, I really hope that that our project can be looked at as to show what the role of university can be in responding to what people might call a societal problem. I think we don't have to be limited to researching problems as academics. I think we have a role as universities and as academics to be able to provide some of the responses to those problems. And then what our drug checking projects tries to do is we try to create something that hasn't existed, that's not there, and then attach our research to that, to be able to research how do you create these interventions that might be really useful to respond to the public health needs, and then to put evaluation to that, and then to build new innovations. I don't know if you want to say about where we'd go next with it.
Yeah, I think one of the things we think about as far as the future steps is seeing what we can do to enable other people to work in this area as well. So far, a lot of the innovations we've developed for our software, whether it's the service delivery models or the hardware we use or the software, have all been kind of geared towards us. We've been so focused on what are the best tools that we can develop to offer our service and our research. And now we're thinking about how can we put these tools in the hands of other people and make them more flexible and scalable so that other people can use them even outside of our city and outside of our province. And
how does your work support equity, diversity, and inclusion in post-secondary education?
Well, one of the things that's really amazing is that we have students and staff from many different backgrounds all working together at the service storefront. So for example, in chemistry, students have the opportunity to TA first-year chemistry, for example, and supervise the labs and grade the reports. And many students in our project instead, when given the opportunity, choose to work at the substance storefront. And they're facing very real community issues that they see on a daily basis. And the idea that students from a social work or public health or harm reduction or science or computer science background can come together in that type of setting is really a way that they can learn from each other.
Yeah, the experiential learning in the site, I think, was something that we didn't really predict to be such a significant part of this project. And it is the students and sometimes the grads that become staff that really are the project and are coming up with the ways that we need to be able to do this work. And so for equity, diversity, and inclusion, it's about that we're in community, working with a community that's often heavily stigmatized and marginalized and criminalized. And students are able to have these experiential learning opportunities about not reading about this as theory, but actually how to respond like in the moment. And we've really been able to see the benefits of the exchange between students in different disciplines within a storefront setting in a downtown to be able to figure those things out together. And so like any of our innovations are not our innovations, like they come from that site, that collaboration of all the students and staff that are really like creating it at the moment. And again, I think that's the value of implementation science, is what comes out of those collaborations.
How does your work advance the calls to action in the 2015 Truth and Reconciliation Commission report?
The beginning of our project was just how do we actually get drug checking in the hands of community and how do we make it work? And then from that, we've been working towards an Indigenous harm reduction framework for drug checking. And so working with Indigenous students and graduates or postdocs on our project to be able to figure out how drug checking can expand to basically have some cultural safety to it, but it's also around tailoring. So how do we tailor it to work best for different communities, including Indigenous communities? The reconciliation is around looking at the harms of colonization, and there's so many that intersect in this project. There's the universities, there's health, there's social work, science, but then we're also introducing technologies in public health. And so we bring that awareness, but then how do we actually change the way that we do that work with Indigenous communities, Indigenous service users is what we're working on. And so it is that tailoring for cultural safety, but it's also looking at what are the different knowledges and evidence as those of us who do science. And so we don't want the technologies and all of our work on method development and new technologies in community to replace other forms of knowledge, or to privilege what knowledge is more important than other knowledge. So that's what we're grappling with. And I think, we really want to, we're trying to work with community and try to figure out the ways to be able to have those sort of coexist. But also, again, I think it's around tailoring. It's not thinking that if we were able to develop a model that works, it's not going to work for everybody. So we need to be able to figure out all the different ways to make it work.
And even outside of the scope of this question, we're constantly wondering how to incorporate local knowledge in order to improve the services and improve the tools.
So we focus mainly on your research, but you're also teachers and mentors. In your teaching, what is the most important message you want your students to take away from their studies with you?
Well, I guess one of the things I can talk about first is classroom teaching, which is not normally what we think about in the context of this project. But one of the opportunities I have is to teach undergraduates in chemistry, and one of the classes I teach is about instrumental analysis, where students learn about basic techniques you could use to identify substances. And there, I like to really bring examples from the drug checking project to show students that these techniques actually are used in the field and aren't just used in industry, but they can be used at home where they live in the community in a way that is meaningful to people directly.
I think one of the things that we learned was that the chemistry students were all of a sudden learning a lot of social work, and a lot of the social work students were learning a lot of chemistry. And that I didn't expect that, and I think it was we were able to start seeing the co-learning that happens in our settings, but also just how they're not that separate disciplines maybe when you're starting to work together on solving some of the problems that are in front of you. And I think just overall the teaching is just the value of experiential learning I think that it's really it's hard work, and it's really interesting to see when the benefits of some of that on top of all the coursework and everything else.
Thank you. So is there anything you wish to say to the nominators or the CUFA BC selection committee?
Well, first, we're grateful to be receiving this award, but in this case of our particular project, we just want to acknowledge that it's a large group of people who are doing the work, that are doing the research, that are doing the work in the community, that are operating the service in the storefront, that are interacting with communities across BC that we provide services and engage in research with. So we want to acknowledge the dedication and hard work and all the inspiration we get from all those people.
Yeah, and we just, again, there's the trusted communities that welcome Dennis and I to be able to do this work and research with them. And so that's been so important. And I think the award for us means, it's really useful. And when we do work that is in sectors that can be quite politicized and debated and politically and seem to come with some inherent risk involved. We're working in areas, again, of real criminalization and in a crisis environment. So having the recognition from our colleagues and from other places, like it's really useful to be able to have the security, to be able to do the work, to take the risk, to be able to really do this, to really be responsive to what is such a significant crisis. And so the award means a lot for that work too.
So thank you for joining me today to talk about your work. I want to congratulate you both again on being awarded the 2025 CUFA BC Eor Boyanowski Academic of the Year Award as part of our annual Distinguished Academics Award series. I look forward to following your continued successes at the University of Victoria.